Welcome back to Man the Helm podcast. Today I am joined by Mark of Summer School Electronics. How's it going, sir?
Good. How's it going with you, buddy?
Not too bad, man. So we were kind of talking before we got going, and I like to remind people of this. And I started this podcast, YouTube stuff, kind of getting back into gear because there's always like I've seen that stigma since I've been playing guitar of the you don't know what this is sort of mentality. You know what I mean? A very niche specific thing. Especially, when it comes to the gear world, which essentially are just, toys for guitar players and bass players and stuff like that. I've never really seen the the reason why people get so upset about these small components of these parts that make this massive difference in their mind,
Yeah.
But that's kind of what I was getting at. Is it's okay to be ignorant on things, guys. Everything's completely fine. It's all right. We all start somewhere.
That's
but,
right.
Before we get kind of started into, what you're up to these days, let's kind of dive back a little bit, get your backstory a little bit, kind of maybe where you started playing music. We can, develop it from there if that's good with you.
Sure. You want to go all the way back to starting playing music?
We can go embryonic if you
right.
like.
Whatever you want to do. I'll try and give the condensed version. I played drums before I played guitar. Like I started drums in like middle school and then played in a garage band with some buddies. And the guitar player didn't want to write original tunes. So I was like, teach me to play guitar. I'll figure it out. And he was kind of like, here's a D chord and a power chord and there's the internet and go figure it out. So did that and kind of played like punk rock, indie rock kind of bands. Excuse me. All through, college and thereafter. And we had done some like DIY touring and like crashing on friends' floors and driving around in a big Econoline van and doing all that. And then after a few years of that, my back was hurting from sleeping on floors and
I can't imagine why. Yeah,
being broke all the time and all that. I went back to school for teaching. Got my master's in elementary education and special education. And for the last 12-ish years, 13? I don't know. I can't remember right now. But for over a decade, I've been teaching at a public school in Syracuse, New York. And during COVID, when everything shut down, it was like, well, I'm no longer teaching. And at the time, I was playing in a bunch of bands, and we were playing like doing some cover band and original band stuff. And I was playing like 50 gigs a year or something. So during COVID, when everything stopped, it was like, well, you're not teaching and there's no gigs. So you got all this time on your hands.
Right.
So I bought a pedal kit and I was like, I'm going to figure out how to do this. This would be a fun hobby to kill some hours. And like one led to a couple more, led to a few dozen more, led to 100 more. And as you just went down the rabbit hole, it was like, how do you do mods? How do you do breadboarding? How do you use computer programs to build your own PCBs? How do you blah, 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 blah. So in September of 2021, I decided I'm going to start a little silly company called Summer School Electronics. I'm a teacher, and this will be my summer job. And we put up a pedal for pre-order, and we got more pre-orders than I was planning on building, so I'm like, I guess I got to make more. And it just kind of went from there, and it was just like, I sent some stuff to Josh Scott from the JHS show, got to be friends with him and that whole team, and it just kind of grew from there, and we did some pedal shows. We went to NAMM, we went to Earthquaker Day, we're going to Fretboard Summit at the end of the month.
Very nice.
It just keeps going, yeah, so that's, tried to compress it as much as I could.
Oh, no, yeah, you're good. Yeah. What was that? What was the kit you bought, the original first one?
The company's called BYOC. It stands for Build Your Own Clone, and they have a bunch of them. The first one I got was a clone of a Roland BG Fuzz, which is like a fuzz from the 60s. I'm not the biggest fuzz fan, but I had heard like those are pretty simple circuits.
Right.
And most, like a fuzz face is, the BG fuzz is a little more complicated. And like, I did it totally wrong. So I had to like go on the forums and look up like, how do I fix this? And I got real good at removing solder. And so I was like, well, I'm fixing that one. I'll order another one to start from scratch. And that was like, it's like a modded Boss DS1. Like it had some changes
Okay.
in it. But I was like, it's cool. I'll get a DS1 was my first pedal ever. I'll go this way. And so I was like fixing one while building the other from scratch. And by the end, they both worked. So I was like,
Yeah.
all right, here's something. And I think I tried like a delay pedal, and that was okay. And then a buddy was like, make me one. I'm like, dude, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I've made 3, and like one of them was like kind of iffy if it's good. It still works. Like, what are you talking about? He's like, no, just I'll pay you. Just make me one. And that kind of started like, oh, other people kind of want this too. So yeah, it was wild.
I think that's kind of what you have to do, though. That whole it's a similar story. I'm sure you know better than me across the board of guys and girls that start making anything, whether it's pedals or guitars or whatever. The first one is just like, okay, we're going to learn how to do this, and we're going to mess it up, and then we're going to try to fix it now. You know what I mean? And then,
Yeah.
like you said, it just kind of starts cascading. And I think those skills are valuable in that learning process, is messing up those first 2 or 3.
Oh man.
To the point where you have to fix it.
Well, that was the whole thing. Cause like, so I'm teaching all during this, and even so like summer of 2020 is when I started. So all through like the fall and like through the spring and summer of 21, like I'm still just learning. Where I'm like, I would like try these other clone kits. I made like 100 clones, and like I'd make like a handful to like sell on Reverb to fund the ones for me. But like,
Sure.
while you're doing it, you're learning, and you're like, why does this part do this? And you're just getting frustrated. And I have like a little box I just call the graveyard of just like failed PCBs that you're like,
Right.
I don't know, that one's got some gremlins in it. I could not figure out why it didn't want to work. But from like, I'm teaching at the same time. So I'm teaching, I do math AIS, which is academic intervention services. So
You're everybody's favorite then.
yeah, the kids who aren't great at math, so they don't like math, come see me for more math. So I'm
Right.
everyone's favorite. But you have that all day where like, you're watching kids who are like, I don't get it, but like they persevere through. So
Yeah.
you kind of feel guilty if you're like, I'm giving up on this. Like, no, those kids are persevering. You can figure out this clone. You can push your way through it. And yeah, but that's the whole thing of like, you got to keep trying, and like you're gonna find tons of stuff that goes wrong.
Yeah. And to kind of give reference back to somebody you've already referenced is Josh Scott. I know he didn't come up with the phrase, but one of the things that always stuck in my mind when watching one of his live streams, or I can't remember where it was at, it was like, if you want to be successful, just stick around. And when I say successful, I don't mean like monetary success or huge fandom or whatever that is. I mean, like you're doing what you want to do, and you're making it for yourself, and it's starting to kind of come together. That's the sort of success that I'm referring to. You know what I mean?
Absolutely, yeah. It's just, I mean, not quitting is technically success. Like,
Right.
you know what I mean? As long as you're
Yeah.
still doing it.
Yeah. And that's the one thing that I have noticed about a lot of other builders that I've had on here. That's what I love about the guitar world, especially in the gear world, at least from the people that are actually making the things. Everybody is super helpful. It's an open door for the most part. I'm sure there are always in every group a handful of people that you might not want to associate with, but for the most part, everybody is super awesome, willing to help. There's no like gatekeeping, like, oh no, this is mine. You can't. I'm not going to tell you how I did this sort of mentality. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's because that's the funny thing too, is like from a business side, like building a pedal is very different than designing a pedal, and that's very different than building a company. Like these are all different skills, and I've met so many different. Just the pedal world alone. Like there's the guitar builders, the amp builders, and everything else. But like in the pedal world, like there are some people who are like, I'm just gonna make 20 of this and then I'm done. Like I have another job. I don't want to build a whole company. And some people are like, no, I'm gung ho. Like I'm putting in the work to do everything you got to do. And because everybody is like for the most part, pretty clear about what their goals are. They're all willing to kind of help each other because it's not like,
Yeah.
I bought a distortion pedal. Well, I'm done. No, you're not.
Right.
Like,
No.
no, that's you. You've opened a door that you probably will not be able to close. Like,
No.
you're gonna keep going. Like,
No,
and
I've made the. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, that's fine. It was like I'm just saying, it just keeps going, and that's the whole thing of like, there are pedal builders that I've talked to who it's like, I love our snow day delay pedal is our delay pedal that I use for most things, but I'm like, I've bought so many other delay pedals from other companies just because I'm like, it's a little different. It has a different feel or it colors your tone. Like, nah, I need to have more of those. So like I'm sitting on probably more delay pedals than on paper I should have, but I love them all and I want more.
Yeah, I think it's kind of the same thing with, medium to low gain dirt with me, and that's with most guitar players, you know what I mean? It's everything is just a little bit different. Everything adds a little bit of a different character, and I'm not going to stop buying those. That's not going to happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And for gigging and whatnot, yes, I have a very practical board where I have everything laid out specifically for what I need for said gig. But when it comes to me up here, like, dude, I have whatever I want. I can string along whatever I'd like to do, and I want to have those options. It's no secret to anybody that listens or watches me online that I'm a huge Wampler fanboy, and one of the things that he's really good at is the dirt stuff, man. So
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the one thing I will say that I have gotten into the rabbit hole thanks to Philip Carter over the 40 watt is fuzz, because I have never been a fan of fuzz at all. I don't know why. Maybe I haven't found the right one. And that's kind of been my rabbit hole for the past like 6 months, is trying to find like something I'm really digging.
I've tried fuzz so many times throughout the years. And like I know the trick to fuzz is you play to the fuzz. The fuzz doesn't bend to your will. So like you have to be like, "Oh, this is glitchy or this is super saturated." I have to play something for that. And just growing up, like I played like punk rock, indie rock, post-hardcore, alternative rock stuff where like there's not a lot of fuzz in that. Like I don't try to do like the Zeppelin, Hendrix, classic rock stuff. So I'm like, I just don't have those riffs. I just don't play that way. So I'm like, I don't know. So like when I was designing our fuzz, I was like, I would like, design the breadboard. I'm like, I think that's kind of cool. And I showed it to one of my buddies who's like big into fuzz. And like he would play it. I'm like, there's a prototype. What do you think? And he's like, it sounds like if Mark Turley made a fuzz. I'm like, is that good? And he's like, I see why you went in this. He's like, he liked it. And he's like, it's cool. And we've put it out. And he's like, I see why you went in this direction based on like how you play. You know what I mean?
Right.
So.
Well, I think that's one of the best parts about the different dynamics of a lot of these companies, especially some of the smaller people that have their own twist on a classic design. And like you just said, because that's the most inspiring part about gear for me. It's what it makes me want to do. It like you said, I'm not being so stubborn as to where I'm like, nope, I'm fighting through this. Even though it's a glitchy fuzz, I'm going to try to play something really round and smooth and, whatever. I'm going to play to the pedal. And that's one of my favorite things, is finding out about new builders, smaller builders, medium-sized builders that kind of have that classic take on a pedal. But like you said, you designed it with like your ideas in mind as far as your playing style. So now it's going to be completely different from probably a lot of the other stuff that's out there right now.
Yeah. And I've gotten a lot of feedback on it where like people will plug into it and at a pedal show or whatever and just be like, that is a gnarly fuzz. I'm like, cool, you like it? I'm like,
Thanks.
Thanks. I'm like, that's what I was shooting for. So I'm like, I got other drive pedals and distortions and whatever. I'm like, this was like, let's get nuts. I'm like,
right.
So, all right, if that's what you're taking from it, then like mission accomplished. Cool.
Yeah. Well, so when you started kind of building those prototypes, people started asking you for some things, and you were still kind of like in that infancy of summer school electronics. what was kind of like the first circuit that you were thinking like this is where we're going to start from, or was there a
Uh,
couple?
so the first, I was just talking about this the other day. The first one was, so when I was building clones, I was trying to also find like there's a lot of pedals I just never owned. Like they're
Hmm.
available, I just never got around to buying one. And
Sure.
like the 250 Distortion Plus circuit,
Okay.
I just
Hmm.
never owned one of them. And I was like, I'm gonna try to make one of these clones, and I got it, and it was like a pretty simple build. And at the time for all the clones, I had a drawer full of stamps, doing the old school JHS thing, where you just put a stamp on it to mark it because it's easier than
Hmm.
drawing with a Sharpie. And
For sure.
we had just we had just gotten uh, my first dog, my buddy Gus, and he was a rescue during COVID and all that. And he's a little black schnauzer, and so I'd gotten a stamp that had a little schnauzer dog on it, and I was like, all right, well, I'm just gonna jokingly call this DoD 251 a Gus Drive. And so when we were talking, like, I think I want to start a company. Well, what do you want to make? And I was like, well, I know there's a lot of mods you can do on like a 250, and I'm like, I just want to pedal with my dog on it because like now we're playing gigs again, and I'm like, if I'm
Right.
playing a bar gig till like 3 in the morning, I want to look down and see my buddy on the pedal board. So we'll do that. So like I started working on
Right.
modifying that 250 style. Um, I just really hot rodded it, made it louder and like way more aggressive, and it has the versatility where it can be like a kind of a cleaner boost, but once like the diodes kick in, now it's just like badass distortion. And I was just like, well, I'm gonna
Right.
call that the Gus Drive, and that's what we're gonna do. And yeah, so that's kind of where it's all started, you know.
Nice.
And
Well,
so
and
yeah.
see, I
Oops, sorry, I talked over you.
well, I do. No, no, you're good. Like I said, sorry for any mix up here because of uploading a little weird right now, but we're good.
Oh,
But
that's
no, that's what
good.
I really enjoyed looking through some of the catalog of what you guys are putting out currently, and I love the graphics, and that's one of my favorite things about smaller pedals is, or smaller pedal manufacturers, is there's not like this, oh, we got to come up with a cool name and something that's going to, market well and do all this. It's like, dude, we're just going to do what we want. We're going to have something funny, or we're going to have something quirky, or we're going to have something interesting to myself. Like, there's not like a weird thing that happens when kind of companies get a little too big that I see. And it's like, now
Hmm.
it's got to be slick, clean, and cool. And this is what it's got to, we got to fit these parameters now. You know what I mean?
Yeah, which I mean, I get. You know, I understand you want mass market appeal. You need to do something
Sure.
safe and whatever. But like, no, this whole thing started again was like, I want to pedal with my dog on it. And then the second one
Right.
was we have another dog named Gladys, and I was like, well, she needs a pedal too.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I'll make a dozen of them, and I'll use one, and like 11 will sit on the shelf. And someday someone will be like, "What are in those boxes?" I'm like, this is a dumb thing I made once. That's kind of funny.
Yeah.
That's what I assumed would happen, um, and it didn't. So
Yeah.
it's like, oh, there we go. But even like the early ones, we were trying to figure out, like, I don't know what we don't have a shtick. Like we're calling it summer school because I'm a teacher, but we have these
Sure.
like pedals with dogs on it. We did one with the upside down traffic lights called the Stone Thrower Fuzz. It's like a local thing. We have this in Syracuse, an upside down traffic light. It's
Oh,
this whole
okay.
Irish tradition thing. It's a
Oh,
long
okay.
story. But we released it on St. Patrick's Day, and it was like
Nice.
a huge thing locally. But like, whenever I would bring him to like the Brooklyn pedal show or something, everyone's like, "So what's the deal with the traffic light?" I'm like, "All right, let me tell you the story." And I just got exhausted from telling that story over and over.
Sure.
Um, but as we went through, we were like, once we did like the snow day delay, we were like, it's kind of funny, teacher, snow day, whatever. And then
Mm-hmm.
we did the science fair, and that became like our big seller. And we were like, okay, I think we just need to go all in on the school thing. So like the dog pedals, we now call those like that's our teacher's pet series.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
then the half day compressor and the pep rally fuzz, and we're doing all of a whole bunch of other ones coming out that are all on brand for that like school theme. And we're like, all right, I think that's gonna go. And it can be silly. And my buddy Steve Peterson, we've played in bands since we were like 14. He does all the artwork for us.
Oh,
So
nice.
when I was starting, I know there's like some things I'm okay, maybe even good at, and there's things that
Hmm.
I know I'm like horrible at. And I've never been like a very uh like visual artist kind of person. Like I can
Hmm.
like doodle, but I can't make like this is what we're putting out. Like if I did like I've album covers or t-shirt designs, I never really liked the ones that I did. But so
Yeah.
Steve was doing um like our t-shirts for our cover band at the time. So
Hmm.
I sent him like a half-assed version of a pedal idea. I'm like, "Can you do this but like good? Like it needs these knobs and the LED here. Like this is the name of it. Like this is kind of the photo reason. Can you make that good?" And so, he came back with like the Gus Drive and the Gladys, and as we went on, it was like, I'm gonna add a background to it. And I was like, oh, that's bringing it to a new level. And then he's like, I'm gonna add. By the time we did like the snow day delay, he was like, I'm gonna go crazy on this one. And I was like, go for it, man. What do you want to do? He's like, I'm gonna have a snowman with this whole backdrop. We're gonna have snowflakes coming down on the whole thing. And I'm like, go for it. I can't. And I saw it. And I was like, this is perfect. This is exactly it. And every time he like sends me a draft, I'm like, this is already perfect. Like very minimal notes. This is great. And because we've been friends for like, I don't know, almost 30 years or whatever, it's like
Hmm.
we can go through and be like, hey, I want it to be like this Easter egg or this style from this super obscure reference that only people who knew us when we were 16 will get. And I'll reference that, and he's like, oh, totally. I know exactly what you're talking about. And it's like, cool. We know what we're doing. And it just helps like streamline the whole process.
Well, I think it's really important too. Anybody in a creative field or any field really is to lay into your strengths and really hone those, but accept that you cannot do everything as well as somebody else might be able to. It just really works out that the person that's doing it for you or you and him are super awesome friends and don't even really have to do a whole lot of back and forth from what it sounds like. You know what I mean? It's just like, hey, this is the
Yeah.
idea. You get the final product. You're like, yep, that looks great, man. I'm so happy with that.
Yeah.
You
It,
know?
it, it it's one of those things where it's like we just text every day and just spitball all these
Yeah.
crazy ideas back and forth. And like there are times where, I'm like, oh, I think it'll be like I have this idea. Like I think it was when we did like the pep rally, and I was like, it's
Hmm.
gonna be called this. It's gonna be a fuzz. It has 3 knobs and blah blah blah. And he's like, so what's the art gonna be? I'm like, pep rally. I don't know. And you know, we really had to like play with it and got like the football stadium idea, and we're like, oh, that'll be great, and you could do so much, and like it just took a little bit of spitballing to get it there,
Oh,
but
sure.
it was never like, well, I can't do anything until you give me an idea. It was like we just kind of worked back and forth, and then he was like, what about this kind of idea? We're like, yes, that, run with that, that's great. So we always do
So,
fun stuff.
well, and I think that's kind of the appeal. Like I've never. It's been kind of a while since I've enjoyed scrolling through like product websites,
Hmm.
and it was always awesome to kind of go through the next thing that you guys have and be like,
Oh,
dude, that's
awesome,
such an
thank you.
awesome graphic, man. Oh, dude, yeah, like, well, and to be fair, and this is the reality of the situation. Guitar players looking at you, we play with our eyes. You know what I mean? First
Oh
and
yeah.
foremost, we if something looks visually appealing or if something catches our eye, we're going to internalize it as it being if we enjoy it, it's going to be better than insert whatever other, same ish thing. You know what I
Totally.
mean?
Yep.
So I think that's a real important part, not just for the marketing side of it, but for like when you start to like interact with people, especially on social media, it's good to have that sort of like, if we're coming to summer school electronics, we're going to see some awesome graphics that we're already going to like, and then seeing the pedal, hearing the pedals, that's what you're seeing the whole time. Yes, you're hearing the sound coming from the pedal, but I think it's really important to have that striking visual for the most of the audience. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's when we do different shows and events. You have like 20 pedal builders all in a room,
Yeah.
and it's everything from like MXR and Dunlop down to like somebody who's like, I just made this morning, and it's like, what I mean, the whole thing. And one of the comments that we constantly get are people just being like, wait, I have to play that. Did you see that? I gotta go, like, as they're walking by, or they'll like wait in line just to be like, I see a raccoon on it. I gotta know what this thing sounds like. I'm like,
Right.
yeah, it sounds like a raccoon.
Yeah. Well, I kind of wanted to. And I'm sorry, forgive my ignorance. That is the science fair. Is that correct?
The raccoon is the class reunion. The science fair has the little rat on
Class
it.
reunion. I'm so yeah.
Yep. No,
So yeah. I'm so sorry about that. No, because
it's totally
like
cool.
I said, I try to have this disclosure out right at the get go. I am in so many gear groups that I shouldn't be in because I don't think about gear that way. Like I really think of myself as a guitar player first and foremost, and
Oh yeah.
the gear is kind of like not. I don't want to say it doesn't matter, but it doesn't matter to me as much as it does to other people. If that makes sense.
I completely get that. That's the other guitar player, one of my bands. Like, I'm like, I can make you so many pedals. And he's like, he has a tuner, like a distortion, one that I made, and then like a delay. And he's like, I'm good. I'm just gonna keep playing. And I'm like, yeah, we could do fun stuff. He's like, nope. And I'm like, all right. But yeah, that's so not part of how just he operates. Versus like, oh, I need to have another drive to like change the texture for this thing, or what, you know what I mean? That's just how we work.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong. Like I do love gear. It's just I don't spend. I guess I don't spend as much time as other people that I interact with going through it and like, categorizing of what I need next for this next thing. It's like most of the gear that I bought has been like, hey, dude, this is really awesome. You should check this out. And I go online, I check some stuff out. And I'm like, I could use that. That's kind of how the process has always worked for me. Here in the past maybe year or two, though, I really have been trying to dive a little bit more deep into it, especially, like I said, with that fuzz rabbit hole, I'm trying to find something that I could really utilize. And I have, I can't remember what it is, something on the board right now from Mastro Vivola. It's a Italian company that makes like an octave filter fuzz thing. And it's
that's cool.
Too insane. There's too many options.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like having expression in to be able to control the filter and stuff like that. Like, don't get me wrong, it is super rad. It's just not me. You know what I mean? I'm trying to. I could see so many applications to use that fuzz, but it's just, man, it's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah. That's definitely a thing of like trying to figure out. Like there is an audience for that, for like somebody who wants to do that. But yeah, I'm with you. I'm like I need something on the fly that if I'm like, oh, it doesn't sound right, I need to look down and be like, oh, it's that. Not like how experimental can we get,
Yeah, like with you, like the I've done the cover band stuff, so I just need something pretty straight ahead as far as getting a halfway decent country tone, getting a halfway decent rock tone, halfway decent maybe alternative, whatever kind of gig we're playing, and that's what I'm going to call it good with. You know what I mean?
Totally.
But like I said, now that my current day job now is I'm only working 3 days a week. So now I'm starting to realize I have a lot more time on my hands to really experiment with the weird stuff. So that's kind of now where I'm going into that other rabbit hole, kind of offshooting the fuzz of, well, let's get some weird stuff now. You know what I mean? I have all the basic stuff. So that's kind of a good thing to kind of get into. One of the things I have always liked about pedals, and we can kind of talk about the one that you have with this, is that blend knob that we can get between two different sorts of sounds. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, totally.
I've always really enjoyed stuff like that, because now it's like I have kind of the best of both worlds, and then I can dial in exactly what I want from both sides of the pedal, regardless of what it is. So with that, when did you guys kind of start to think about stuff like that, or was that just kind of like an idea that just popped into your head as far as like the blending between two circuits?
So I had I've known about the concept of blending because like most pedals, like especially for bass, you would have like a clean blend. So you would get your like dirty tone, you'd mix in the clean, and it's always that. And I was talking to my buddy Matt, who writes for Guitars for Idiots, and he writes for Ultimate Guitar, and we were just talking about different pedals one day because that's what nerds do, and the
Right.
idea of like blends had come up and like blending two different drives, and he was talking about like oh like maybe like a blues breaker and a tube screamer. How would those sound together? And I was like, oh, they're fairly similar in their like gain level of like how dirty they would really get and how they clip, but like the only real major difference is like the mid hump that a tube screamer gives you. So I was like,
Sure.
that's not that exciting. And I was like, and also our Gladys had just come out and that was based on a blues breaker. So I'm like, I already did a blues breaker. I don't know. I was like, but what if we took a tube screamer, which is soft clipping, which just means where the diodes are located in the circuit, and we do it with a rat, which is hard clipping, so the diodes are somewhere else. And I was like, I haven't done either of those pedals yet, and I think those are kind of two standards. Like everybody has them. Like go look under your bed. You have a rat, and look in your closet. You have a tube screamer. We all have them.
Right.
You don't remember buying it, but I know you have it. But it's like, how can we put those together, like, and do my own sort of take on that? That would be something different. Like, oh, I don't think anybody's put them in parallel where you can do the blend. And the way we set it up, they each have their own drive and they each have their own tone. So if you want like a really bright sounding tube screamer, which would be like your, medium gain, light to medium gain, and you want a really dark sounding rat that would be your high gain, well, you can totally do that. And if you want it 50-50, if you want it 60-40, you can kind of blend it. And that really led to like one of the rules that I try to follow when I build a pedal is I want it to be fun to play in a band and I want it to be fun to play alone at home. So if you're just messing with it, you tweak one knob and you're like, "Oh, I'm playing like a whole new song or a whole new style just because I made this one tweak." But once you find like I blend it with like whatever 70% tube screamer and both tones are at 9 o'clock, whatever. That's my band setting. That's what I use on the board. It's reliable and I love it. And it lives between the two pedals. And by doing that, you can kind of find a texture that you couldn't get with just the two. And I thought that was kind of a cool new take on two classics that have been around like since the 70s. And now you can live in this world between it. It's funny because like I get emails from people who will be like, or they'll post videos and it's like they're using it all as a rat or all as a tube screamer. I'm like, it can do so much more. They're like, oh, it's great. I got both of them. I could just twist. I got both right there. I'm like, there's 1,000 other settings that live between there. I'm like, if you're happy, you're happy, and that's cool. You do you. But like, there's so many more little things that you're just scratching the surface if you're looking at it as a rat or a screamer.
Well, see, and that's kind of what I was going to bring up though, because I do have a few friends that do have some stuff where it's like that parallel pedal with the blend and stuff like that, and they do use those circuits like that. It's like one or the other. And I've never kind of, like we were talking about earlier though, like now that we have this ability to sweep between, it's going to make you kind of think about it a little differently. Like if you just want to go play a rat, man, like you just said.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that's there, but having that blend there, I'm already kind of going through my head of like I have a rat style pedal and I always have a tube screamer, you know what I mean? And I'm trying to think of like what would be the coolest thing I could get between those two simultaneously, without having to have two things right next to each other. But yeah, that's one of those things where I do enjoy watching a lot of like the gear demo things and stuff like that. And there has been a few instances where I have gotten a pedal just based off a gear demo because I liked the way it was and I liked the way that the presenter showed off the sounds and what it could do.
Totally.
But then I'm sitting there too, just kind of like you, like all of a sudden I'm unlocking these keys of everything. Like, dude, this thing does like 99% more than what they even showed in the demo
Yeah.
right now. You know what I mean? And it's weird, this bias that we have, that we always kind of go back to what we know as guitar players. You know what I mean?
It's
It's like,
it's funny too, like I don't know. I mean, this is like very like inside baseball, but
okay.
people really want whenever I'm trying or whenever like you have something like a new pedal out, most people who when they first hear like, "Oh, what is it?" And if you just say like, "Oh, it's a new pedal," they're like, "Yeah, but like what's it based on? What's the topology?" And I
Mm-hmm.
find that weird that it's like on one hand, you don't need to know what it is. Do you like it or no? Like go try it.
Right.
Cuz we do have our Trash Panda is like it's kind of its own thing. It started life as one thing, went through a million mods, so that if you were to compare schematic to schematic of like what it started as and what it is now, like they're very different animals. It just because of the way it went through.
Mm-hmm.
But I when I tell them like it's just this thing I made, you should just check it out. They're like, it sounds like they're trying to figure out what topology it came from, and I'm like, that's weird that that's your go-to instead of just being like, ooh, I could use this in my band, or I could play such and such with it. I just think I think it's an interesting thing about guitar players.
I'm telling you right now, I don't have the knowledge base to split those hairs. So it's
Yeah,
one of those things where I plug it in, it sounds good, it is good. You know what I mean? Like I'm
for
good
the
with
most
it.
part, I don't
You know?
have those abilities. Like when I play other people's pedals, I'm
Yeah.
like, that not for me, or ooh, yeah, I might grab that. Like, but I just think it's
Right.
but I try not to ask like I don't want to see behind the curtain. I'm like, does it cool? It's cool. But like I don't know, I think it's funny that but as soon as I told people like, oh, it's a rat and a tube screamer in parallel, they're like, I know what those are. Yes, I'm going for it. And I'm like, which is
Mm-hmm.
fine and it's cool and it's great and I appreciate all of it and it is a fun pedal. I have it on my board. I do, but I just think it's an interesting thing that if you give somebody something to try out and you don't tell them what the topology is, they're more concerned with like trying to figure it out than like do you like it? Do you enjoy what this does? You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's one of the only things that I don't enjoy about, the community of, what would be the best way to say this? Uh, I guess it's more so just like the online thing about
Mm-hmm.
how, I really enjoy this because it does this, and you should like this because it's this. Like that
Yeah,
sort of mentality. And like for me, even when it comes to guitars, even when it comes to amplifiers, even like, dude, I'm gonna be completely honest with you, and I'm probably the worst guitar player because I don't care what it's made out of. I don't care what the pickups are. I
sure.
don't. I'm not gonna sit here and dive deep into that thing. I want it to feel good in my hands, and I
Yeah,
want it to give me something that inspires me to play, whether that's an amp, a pedal, a guitar, whatever that is. That's the main goal. And I mean, at the end of the day, and I've talked to some of my other friends, and I teach guitar too. It's like you picked up guitar because you saw somebody playing it and it made you feel something.
yeah.
You know what I mean?
You've
We
achieved
don't need
guitar
to worry
enlightenment.
about. I don't know about that. I'm trying my best to do that, but
If you're happy, then you're there. That's what we're all searching
it,
for.
exactly. But that's always been my kind of my attitude about it, and it kind of is a shortcoming in some circles because I am the second you start talking about anything specific about gear, it's just way over my head. I'm just like,
Sure.
yeah, that's cool, man. you know,
Yeah.
Whatever you say, you're the guy that's doing it right now.
Yeah.
But but yeah, for me, it's always been about the experience and the feeling and the emotion that it conveys when you're playing through it. You know.
Oh, yeah, totally. And that's the other part too of like being on the designer, maker, builder side of it is like I don't want to lose the like that perspective of like that's who it's for.
Yeah.
Like I always I mean even like playing music, I always thought like the goal of why you're like writing all this stuff and doing is like you want to inspire the next generation. Like there are bands that I saw like
Mm-hmm.
local bands, all the way to like famous world famous bands that you're like, they did something that made me want to be like, I want to be part of that. So the goal is really to pay it forward, to be like, I want to play music
Yeah.
that somebody else might hear and be like, oh, that made me do this. And it's like, yeah, that's art. That's how it goes. And even on like the building side, like when people post like just a clip of them playing and be like, and I was using a science fair, I'm just like, that's the coolest thing ever. That like this little thing that I
Mm-hmm.
made here in my attic, like somebody's using that to make more music. Like, how cool is that? That's the best.
Yeah.
And just trying not to
Well,
get so wrapped up in like how it's made, but be like, it needs to sound good, it needs to sound usable, and it needs to sound inspiring for somebody else down the line. You know what I mean?
for
So
sure. It's whether you're making actual, whether you're making music, whether you're making gear, you're still standing on those, the proverbial shoulders of giants. You know what I mean? You're taking things that
totally.
other people have done and you're adding your own twist to it. And that's always been the biggest thing for me is taking a look at the story of how people got to where they did, because it's all like, if we generalize it, you started making guitar pedals and now you're making, you have a company where you sell guitar pedals. You can hear that story 100 times.
Hmm.
It's the little nuances that happened in between, that how you got from I bought a kit to now I, have a company.
Yeah,
That's what the important thing is, because we could sit here and everybody that's bought a kit that, you know, went from, like you did, I'm going to build 12 of these and 11 are going to sit on the shelf. The other one's going to be here. And then a couple of years from now, people are going to be like, oh, what's that?
yeah,
That whole mentality. Eh, But when we start to think about it from a playing perspective, that's what I always try to get back to. I always try to scope out a little bit and see the big picture. It's like, dude, why did you start playing guitar? It's like, well, because you saw somebody, you had your quote unquote MTV moment. You know what I mean? And
yeah,
you saw somebody that inspired you to pick up that instrument. You
totally.
know,
And yeah, that was. I mean,
but
that's how everybody starts. And it's funny because like I teach a guitar club at our school, and so like I have middle schoolers who are like 12, 13 years old, who come in and are just like, I'm like, hey, do you ever play guitar before or anything? They're like, no, I just thought this would be kind of a cool thing to try. I'm like, all right. And then they're like, can you teach me this song on TikTok? And it's like Smells Like Teen Spirit. I'm like, yeah, I know that one. I got you, buddy. But like,
yep, I
there
got you.
is some there is something timeless about that, where it is like you hear that, or like, I mean, even some stuff like they're bringing in that I'm like, I've never heard of that, but like, we could figure it out real quick, or like, let's get you the skills to get to that, and like, let's try to put something together. Like, there just is something about playing guitar that's just fun and cool. And when you have a bunch of them like doing like, their kids will be like, someone will want to learn to play a riff that we did 2 weeks ago, and I'm like, who remembers how to do that? And somebody else will be like, oh, I'm like, you two go figure it out together. Like, I'm gonna teach the other kids, but you two are gonna sit in the corner and learn to play together and learn to interact. And
Mm-hmm.
like, whoever's the better player has to take care of the one who's just learning, and the one who's learning, you need to keep up, so you're both, you are going to improve. And like, that's how we all learned. Like, you had a buddy who played and you were like, all right, let's try to play together. Mind blown. That's a whole other thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's wild.
Yeah, like I said earlier, I teach at a local shop here, just on the just north of Nashville here, and one of my favorite things is when the students that I have, about, they're getting past that beginner level and starting to creep into that intermediate level, and all of a sudden we start jamming together. That is the
Hmm.
best thing, because now we have this give and take that we can have from each other, you know.
Oh yeah.
And like you just said, though, the skill level, and I've talked to a lot of the kind of early teens that I have, the 13, 14, 15-year-olds, they get really discouraged with that comparison. They're flooded by all the great guitar players online, because now they're really diving deep into that world.
Yeah.
But then when they sit and play, it's awesome to see them finally like connect the dots, and they're like, "Oh, this is not that bad." And that's one of the things I always try to remind them, man. It's just like, dude, with Western music, man, there's 12 notes. That's all you got to
Yeah.
worry about. I'm telling you right now, when you break it down that simply, it's just the 12 notes we're worried about, okay? How we implement them is completely up to you. You know what I mean?
And
But
only 7 of them are in the key.
it's a great experience. Exactly. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
you're right.
if we're playing here, where's your root at? And they're like, oh yeah, cool. I'm like, cool. You know where all these other 7 notes are at from this
Yeah.
position, right? Oh yeah, we're good now. So
It's funny because,
but
like... Oh, sorry. I mean, cut you off.
no. I love seeing the light bulb happen is kind of the overarching thing of right when they see it, you know.
It is just, like, the coolest thing. 'Cause I remember... It's funny you said that. I just triggered this, like, core memory of... So I played drums before I played guitar, and, like, our very first band practice... my buddy Steve, who does all the artwork on our pedals, he was in that very first band. He played guitar, and we were like, I think we were playing All the Small Things by Blink-182, and they like just come out, and we were like, all right, let's figure this out. We all kind of know the parts, and at this point, I had only ever played like along to the CD, and it's like we're gonna play guitar, bass, drums. Let's do it. And I remember playing it. And I remember like we ended. I'm like, that sounded just like the CD. I'm sure it was terrible. It sounded nothing like it was garbage. But in my 14-year-old brain, being the one playing it and being like, we started together, and like when it went to the chorus, we all went to the chorus, and like we ended together. This is insane. And it's like the biggest high that you can just get, and you're just like forever chasing that, playing music. Like that's just like the greatest thing.
Yeah. Well, and I really like what we do too. We have like every 6 months we get all the students together and have sort of like a concert ensemble sort of thing. And for some of these guys and girls, for the first time, they're playing live, like up on a stage. It's kind of intimidating.
That's awesome.
But immediately, right when you see them like lock in with the drums and bass and the rest of the band, this huge smile just comes across their face because you can feel it at that point. You know what I mean?
Oh, it's the
best.
best.
Like, oh man, this is what it's about.
That's so cool.
Yeah,
that's just the best.
Well, it's one of those things, man, where I have maybe 2 or 3, unfortunately, right now, where I feel like the student doesn't really want to play guitar. It's one of those parents thing that they're just like, hey, this is what I want you to do, which they are getting something out of it. It is good for them in some aspects, but man, I have such an awesome group of probably like 12, 13 people right now that are so like all in. And I honestly, I can't wait to see what they're going to do, for the future.
Awesome. Yeah.
So, and kind of like what you said, man, like you get this awesome sense of fulfillment. Like you were saying, when somebody's online or starts, showing off one of your pedals that is inspiring them to make music, it's like, you're like, man, I just showed them how to play a major scale, and now they're like, working out how to mix, between major and minor now, and now they're really trying to like. I kind of gave them that foundation to have that idea. It's awesome.
It's super cool. I mean, I taught private lessons for years off and on, and then once I started like teaching in a school, I was like, I don't got time for more teaching outside of this. Like I'm burnt out at the end of the day. But before all that, when I was like, when I was teaching lessons, this is just like the cool thing. There was a kid who I taught drum lessons to, who was in like kindergarten, and he was young, but his parents were like, he loves it. He's all like, all right, man, we'll do it. And like got him to play a beat, and like I would play guitar and he would play drums, and it was like the best thing. And his family moved, and so I was like, that sucks that we can't keep doing lessons. But like I stayed in touch with his parents through like social media stuff, and now the kid's like done with college, which makes me feel super old. But like he's done with college, and he's booking a DIY tour for his band. So like he's hitting me up to be like, hey, who can I contact in this city? This band's called The Housing Crisis. His name's Dylan. You should check him out. But I was like, that's just from a teacher side, that's the coolest thing ever, to be like, when I taught him was when I was still like doing DIY touring stuff and playing all these bands, and I'd just be like, I just got to make a couple extra bucks. Let's do a drum lesson. Let's do it, man. And now like this kid's
Right.
reached that point in his life and he's doing it. I'm like, that's so cool. That's the coolest thing.
Well, like I said, it's that sense of fulfillment of giving back. Paying it forward,
Yeah,
giving it back. That's
totally.
that's really what if we want to generalize like what I think music does for people, that's really what it is. You know what I mean? The people that are creating it, the people even the people that are doing, you know, the building aspect of the music industry, or even I mean, there's so many small facets of the quote unquote music industry, not just the artist, but that's like that's why I think I connect so much with this side of the community is that's the general mentality of paying it forward, making sure we're trying our best to, not only make a quality product, but also inspire, the people that are buying said product,
100%.
you know?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. That's
well,
what we're all shooting for.
well, and I mean, that should be the goal. That should be the ultimate goal. I mean, I know there's a few people in it that I don't know why you would get into making guitar related
Yeah.
items for money,
Yeah.
but they're, it's that's one of those funny things that I've had a handful of conversations with maybe two or three people that are like, yeah, I'm going to do this. I'm going to make so much money. I'm like, hey man, good luck. I hope you do. I
Yeah.
don't think that's really feasible, but I best of luck to you.
You do
So,
what you got to do.
but before we wrap this up, what's on the horizon? We're about halfway through the year. You said you had some stuff kind of in the works, which I'm sure always is in the works.
Oh
New,
yeah,
new stuff and whatnot. But what's the
so
next 6 months looking like for you?
well, it's August right now. This will probably, I'm assuming this will have already happened by the time this airs, but we're going to Earthquaker Day, and we're going to be sponsors at Earthquaker Day and have a little
Yep.
booth there. And then at the end of the month, we're going to Fretboard Summit. Um, we have a pedal that I'm hoping to have come out in September. We're going to do our
Nice.
every year we do a Halloween version of one of our pedals for October. We only make 31 of them, and they go on sale
Very
October
cool.
1st. And it's just we've done like our Snow Day delay was the Spooky Day delay. Last year the Science Fair was the Science Fear, and so we'll do like special art, same circuit but just special Halloween artwork, and it's limited to 31.
Sure.
So we'll do that in October. I got to start building those right now to get those ready. And then maybe have something out by the end of the year. We're waiting to see. But and then going to be doing NAMM in January and having some more stuff there. And we're just kind of trying to get into some more stores, looking for some more dealers. We've been picking up a bunch this year and just really doing that push to try to get the pedals somewhere where everybody can play them. Because, like I said, demos are cool, but being able to plug into it and play it in a store is like, that's the best. So doing that whole
Yeah.
push right now, and just trucking along. So and then I got to
Well,
start teaching
I mean,
in
it's a good
September
thing. I
too.
mean, it's good to stay. Oh well, I was about to say, yeah, you're about to start picking that back up because we're already almost in August. So yeah, it's gonna
That's
be
the thing.
well. I mean, the good thing is it's not just you by yourself. You do have
Yeah.
at least you have people to spitball off of. And it's also a good thing too. And I've talked to people about this before, where you don't want to ever try to bite too much off than you can chew in this sort of world.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Because
and that's
the last thing you would want is to have something and then all of a sudden, yeah,
yeah. So we're trying to grow organically, but that's kind of the plan right now. Is it's been steady growth so far. We're hoping to continue that and see where the next 6 month to year takes us, and see where that is.
very cool. Well, before we wrap this up, where can everybody find you guys at?
SummerSchoolElectronics.com is kind of our hub for everything. Also on Instagram, Facebook, Threads, TikTok. Instagram is probably the best place. That's my social media of choice. So if you need to get a hold
Okay.
of me, that's probably the easiest way to shoot a message that I'll see.
Awesome. Well, all those will be linked down below, and you guys should check out all the awesome things from Summer School Electronics. Hey, Mark, I had a great time, dude. Thank you for taking the time.
Oh, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Not a problem at all. Well, for Mark, all of you guys, we will check you guys on next week's episode of Man the Helm.